part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
All right, everybody. It's me, Adam the Bull, and I am back again. No, not talking sports. Eventually, I'm going to stop saying that on this podcast. No, not talking sports, because you're going to get used to me talking about television. You've heard me talk about it in bits and pieces throughout my 12 years here in Cleveland and years before that in New York and other places. But this podcast, Up Next with Adam the Bull, is solely focused on television, mostly streaming, because nowadays network TV sucks. Let's face it. It's all crapola out there. The only thing worth watching on network TV is sports, pretty much. But we'll see. Michael Sejas is with us again. Michael, did I manage to pronounce your name right?
You got it. You got it.
All right, good. See, I'm doing better than I did with Idris Elba last week. We're off to a better start here. A lot to get to on today's podcast. Later, my son, the baby bull himself, will join us. We'll get his take on some criticism out there for The Mandalorian, his kids show of the week, and his favorite Marvel TV show of all time. That's something that I'm going to be talking about on this podcast, and we'll answer fan questions later. But joining me to co-host this second episode of Up Next with Adam the Bull is a longtime friend. I've known this guy, I don't know, 45 years. I can't even say how old we were when we met for the first time. We lived on the same block starting in the 4th grade, and we lived next to each other. So we lived on the same block, and then I moved down the street right next door. He's one of my oldest and dearest friends. Andy Robbins is with me to co-host today's episode. Andy, how are you?
Adam, I'm great. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to move on to what has been the biggest reboot, essentially, in my life and possibly yours. Add what your listeners may not know from radio or podcasting or television is that you and I were doing lists and critiquing and commentating in the 80s.
Yes,
In
true.
fact, since you've decided to date us anyway, what I'm going to do is tell you that I recall we would do our top 10 films of the year. I know we're talking television today, but we had our top 10 films for the years 1986, 1987, and 1988, when I guess creative differences forced us to stop listing our top 10 favorite films. Yeah. And of course, our audience back then was probably my golden retriever and no one else. But
maybe our sisters.
No, I feel like
Michael Nikomov, maybe.
Wow, if he's out here listening, his hair just stood up on the back of his
and
back.
His giant dog. Remember, he had that beast of a dog.
I don't. I was in his house once, and I did not enjoy it.
I can't believe you don't remember. I feel like I have to rely on you for all my memories because my brain is shot from all the seizures I had as a kid. So I barely remember anything from childhood.
I remember a lot. I don't remember a large menacing. Was it a menacing dog?
It was like they never let it out of the house. I feel like it would bark whenever we'd knock on the door to go get him. This was a kid that lived another kid lived on our street. I think he was what's those dogs that those huge giant dogs that rescue people in the mountains?
Saint Bernard. It was Saint Bernard. Okay, you know what? Now it's coming back to me.
Do you remember how old we were when I moved down the block next door to you? I can't remember how old I was.
I think 4th grade sounds right. So
no, 4th grade is when I moved onto the block.
Oh, so let's
lived down next to my aunt or near my aunt, and then I moved down the block. I don't remember.
Let's call it 14, just to be safe.
Yeah, all right, something like that. Anyway, yes, we did that. We used to make those lists. We would do DJ. We would DJ. We record us DJing, and our entire set list was Kiss, Billy Joel.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had a little maybe Hall & Oates in there, and Barry
Hall
Manilow.
& Oates was there. It was dependent upon what little vinyl we had, and then what would be audible onto a tape recorder. So essentially, back then, this is sort of before we even began listening to music in earnest. Which I think when you're in your early teens, that's when you start to form, in my opinion, the greatest music that comes into your life and the music that shapes you.
Yeah,
sort of is surrounded by that now. Of that very extensive list you just mentioned, I think Billy Joel certainly played a big part of the soundtrack of 2 New York kids growing up. But the other ones kind of faded away. And of course, we were reliant on whatever was in our parents'
That's true. library, like Barry Manilow. But I feel like you were a bigger Kiss fan than I was as a kid.
Yes. Yeah.
And
I don't even know that
still
I don't even
around.
know that I would call you a Kiss fan. Were you a
No,
Kiss fan?
I don't
No.
think I was, but you were. And when they were on Howard Stern, because I think I recently texted you. I didn't know if you knew they were on. But there's only two of the original members. You know, the two lead guys, Paul Stanley and what's his name, Gene Simmons.
Yeah,
are the only two originals. I think the other two guys are alive, but
they are. They toured with them in recent years, but
Right.
ultimately, and they're having their big farewell tour right now, which
Right.
I'm not compelled to see because
No.
they're not going to have my guy.
Yeah.
I was
Ace
about
Frehley?
the drummer. Ace Frehley was the virtuoso guitarist, and Peter
Oh,
Criss.
yeah. Who was the drummer? Peter Criss,
drummer.
right? Yeah.
It was my guy. I even now your viewers can't see this, but check this out.
Yeah. Oh, is that Peter Criss?
Peter Criss action figure.
Oh, wow. You still have that's amazing.
Yeah, when things go really south, it'll go on eBay. But right
that's
now,
true. That's true. All right, let's get to the focus of today's podcast, of course, which is TV. The show is called Up Next, and I want to get to a bunch of things that we didn't get to talk about last week and some shows that you're interested in. First, let's start with Ted Lasso, because I did talk about Ted Lasso last week. This is somebody actually talked about Ted Lasso with the fan questions, because somebody asked me, one of the questions I got asked last week was if, I can't remember what the examples they used were, but they used Sopranos and Sopranos in the 2000s, and I think Breaking Bad in the 2010s as like the show of the decade, or the most like influential show. And they asked me, well, what's the one of the 2020s so far? And I said Ted Lasso, because I felt like when Ted Lasso came out, it was an extremely dark time. It was COVID, fighting, politics ugly, everybody sad and depressed. And Ted Lasso, I feel like, cheered everybody up. So now we're to season 3. And you texted me the other day and you said that being a dad, you have a young daughter, and being a dad has changed your outlook on Ted Lasso, your enjoyment of it. Explain that to me. What you would get.
Well, I think everything you said is true. I think there was this massive amount of, when you talk about Breaking Bad and Mad Men and The Sopranos, the anti-hero was the official go-to.
No doubt.
It was the official go-to show if you wanted to have a high quality product put out, and they were all fantastic shows. But eventually, it becomes a little exhausting. And Ted Lasso was just a breath of fresh air. And watching him navigate his own relationships and doing so still with not naivete, I think that's where the show was actually exceptional. When the show first started, I remember watching the first couple of episodes because I came in a couple of weeks late to everyone losing their mind over it. I think Sudeikis is fantastic on Saturday Night Live, and I was watching the first couple of episodes, and I thought, okay, it's cute, it's funny. But I think it was episode 4 of the first season where he had to finally deal with some of the things back home in his life, whether it was the separation with his wife. Well, hopefully, I'm not spoiling anything from anyone. And the relationship with his and his relationship with his kid. But I feel as though the show started to turn on a dime for me, where it was an eye opener for me, where you start to see where the show could go, and how many places outside of the feel good comedy, which it is, it had the power to explore. And I thought the show took off from there. And as being a parent, it's a good gut check. As you say, we're still living in conflicted times. Things are a little bit better now. We're not isolated. We need to be around people more. I think if the pandemic taught us anything, is how much we rely on the comfort of others. And the manner in which he, without being preachy, conducts himself seems to be a really good moral center for me. And every time I am trying to be a perfect dad, or not that I think that's even possible, but watching him and his foibles, but his optimism seems to break down any issues that it might have had. And you feel better about yourself, which is also a strange thing to say, but Bluey is also another show that does that for me. And now as a father of a 5-year-old, it's more than cute. I would argue, and this is a whole other podcast, I would argue it's the best pound for pound television.
Wow. Aaron loved it. He's a little old for it now, but he did love it.
I'm a lot older than than the little bull, and I'm telling you, pound for pound, moment for moment, that show is genius.
Okay, I mean, I may have to give it a second run.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
give it a second run. You're
Oh, yeah.
right. What separates Ted Lasso, there's many things that separates Ted Lasso from typical comedies. And I think we're living in an era where generally there aren't a lot of good comedies. I've tried some of the network comedies.
Mhm,
I find them all cheesy.
mhm,
And what we typically see is the dopey guy.
mhm,
And although Ted Lasso is at times a little dopey, the core of him is not dopey. He's actually a smart guy
mhm.
who it seems like he's dopey just because he tries to see the best in everybody, or he seems naive, as you said, because he tries to see the best in everybody, but he knows what's going on, but he doesn't let that affect him all the time. But then when they get into his personal life, as you say, when they get into the therapy angle, which they've gotten into the last 2 years, it has become more of a comedy drama, but there are still at its core so many just laugh out loud funny moments of
Well,
the
you know
show.
what I think it is, and if I'm going to correct myself, if I don't think he's naive about run a soccer team, but
Yeah.
he's incredibly bright. What I think people tend to underestimate him and underestimate people like that. He's incredibly earnest. He's not cynical, and I think
Yes.
oftentimes that comes off as being, well, if you're not sarcastic, if you're not cynical, you're not bright. And I think that's the big breath of refreshing air with him. He's
Yeah.
just incredibly earnest,
Yeah.
and that is why I feel as though people, and it's certainly myself as well, are drawn to it. Yeah, yes, number one, he's funny. He's incredibly funny.
Yeah.
You couldn't be that type of funny without being smart. And the earnestness that he brings to anything, and the way it's even portrayed in the show, how you can, convert the diehards like Brett Goldstein's character,
Yeah.
Roy Kent, and watching this curmudgeon become, having his walls slowly broken down by this man
Yeah.
is kind of how it became a little bit of a parable for how we need to be in our own lives and how we need to have a
Right.
little bit more believe and goodness.
Yeah, no doubt. The supporting cast, you mentioned Brett Goldstein, the supporting cast around him,
Mhm.
every character on the show is interesting. There's some depth to them.
And well rounded, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone gets their time in the sun. I
Yeah,
think it's the writing staff does an exceptional job of that.
no doubt. I think it'll be sad if they do end it after season 3, but in a way that's good. Some of these shows go on too long. So
I think that's what's great about streaming in general. They
yeah.
the creators, at least of the shows that I love the most. And it's not. I mean, you obviously want shows. You'll miss them. You can always rewatch them. But I think
Hmm.
what's great about creators of content right now, especially on streaming services, is that they can tell the story they want to tell and not have to worry about ad revenue.
Right.
They're auteurs. I remember one of my favorite show at the time where I was obsessed with it was Lost. I don't know if you
Right.
remember Lost. And I think
Yeah.
where Lost, well, I have
Yeah.
to ask if you remember
Yeah.
Lost. Of course, yeah, we were all around. Lost was extraordinary television until, and again, that's network television, and that they play by
Yeah.
different rules. And they said, okay, well, you're making us a ton of money. We want more of it. They
Right.
probably could have had an extraordinary 5-year run. The show
Yeah.
went on for, I think, 10 years or something close to
Right.
that.
Too long.
Yeah, the writers were like, we don't know how to pad this out, and they started throwing in the tailies, and then
Right.
they started making it ridiculous, and then eventually they had to rush it to the end, and
Yeah.
the end felt kind of rushed. So
I, I think Game of Thrones is this, to some degree the same thing happened. It wasn't quite as many seasons, but it was like they went a little too long and they rushed the end, and everybody was
yeah,
disappointed. I think if you look at some of the greatest shows of all time, you look at Breaking Bad, even Better Call Saul, certainly The Wire. I think generally that 5, 6 seasons is the sweet spot for the best shows.
yeah, I think
You know?
anything more than that, it just becomes fan service or
Yeah.
like anything else. You don't want to miss your friends, but
Right.
if you want a good story, and the truth of the matter is, every show in recent memory that I've been sad that has been ending, there's just so much stuff. There's
Yeah.
just so much stuff. You'll
It's
find
never ending.
something. You'll find
Yes.
something, and and the quality is becoming consistently better
Oh yeah.
across at least 6 streaming networks that I can think of.
Yeah.
You'll find something.
Yeah, no doubt. I got about 15 shows on the list that I got to get to, but especially now with that baseball season started, I'm watching so much baseball that I'm
Yeah.
not watching quite as much. I still watch a lot of streaming TV, but not quite as much right now with baseball season. All right, let's get to
Oh,
some
and you
other
have a
things.
job. You have a
You're
job
right.
too,
I
and
do
a
actually have a
family.
job. Yes.
Yeah.
A couple other shows I want to hit on because there are some other good comedies. Shrinking is
Mhm.
one I know you said you watched. I did watch the first season as well. Again, I thought the ensemble for this show very good. I was, really surprised when I heard Harrison Ford, but things have changed. It used to be taboo for a big time movie star to be on a TV show. That's gone. That doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. Sylvester, whatever you say about him, Sylvester Stallone was a big star. He was on a TV show, which I enjoyed. Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to be in a TV show called FUBAR that's coming out in May, which that's a perfect name for a show he's on. But Harrison Ford in the show, and he wasn't the star. He was, a supporting actor in this. But, oh, my God, I forgot his name. Jason, what's the name guy?
Jason Segel, yeah.
Segel. And is it Michelle Williams? Is it Michelle Williams? I can't think of her name.
No. Jessica Williams.
Jessica Williams. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, he's great. He's great in everything. But she's phenomenal. I've seen her in a few things recently. She was in the season 2 of Love Life on HBO Max. There was some movie I watched with her recently. I can't think of the name of it. I really like her. I don't know where she's come from in recent years, but
The Daily
awesome.
Show. I think
Daily Show,
stand up The Daily Show. She was fantastic.
She's great.
And
even the supporting cast, like Ted McGinley, the one I can't think of the actress's name that plays his wife on the show, the daughter. I mean, it's really well done. Did you like it a lot, or were we lukewarm on it?
I did. I thought the concept of it ultimately, it sounds silly. I enjoyed it. To your point, what made it enjoyable were the characters.
Yeah.
I think it sort of went a little bit as the show went on. It became less about the mission statement, which intrigued me, which is a therapist who's going to try all this avant-garde therapy in the wake of his own personal tragedy. I thought it would become a little bit more, I don't want to say dramedy, but I thought it would go a little deeper than that. And eventually it just became kind of a family sitcom in a weird way to me, which was enjoyable. They were like friends you wanted to see every week. But I was a little disappointed in that it wasn't a deeper dive into that element of it. But like you say, Jason Segel is an incredibly likable guy. Harrison Ford, it was just fun to watch him being a curmudgeonly Harrison Ford, which is fun to watch. And all the supporting characters, you root for them. So, it's a credit to the writing, credit to the actors for bringing, likable characters to the screen. For me, though, it was just a little disappointing because I thought it was going to be a little bit, not edgier. I thought it was going to challenge the notion of therapy a little bit more than it did.
I agree. I think it did lose its way with that as the season went along. I think there were some, interesting moments with Harrison Ford and his daughter and Jason Segel's character with his daughter and the relationship between him and Jessica Williams. Did I get it right this time? Jessica Williams?
Yes, you did.
But in the end, it was good. It's not Ted Lasso good, but it was a good quality show. One other comedy. I don't know if you've seen this one. It's actually comes out. It's coming out today. This podcast is going to be out Thursday. We're recording it the day before to be legit with the audience here. It actually comes out by the time you hear it, folks. Yesterday, on Wednesday, it comes out on actually a channel called Freeform, which a lot of people probably don't even know if they have it. But then the entire season will stream on Hulu starting on Thursday, which is when some of you may listen for the first time. It's called Single Drunk Female. I don't know if you've seen this show at all. It's a second season. Have you seen this?
I've seen the trailer for it. I haven't gotten around to it yet.
It's actually very cute. Again, it's not that deep a show, but if you're looking to laugh, she's a really good character. I don't know the actress's name offhand, but the first season was very funny. She plays she's a girl from Boston. She goes to New York to become a writer. She's working for some crappy online outfit where she's writing stupid stories, but she's got a drinking problem. She ends up getting in trouble. She has to go back home and hijinks ensue, if you will. It's not a typical, network comedy. It's better than that. It's certainly not Ted Lasso or even Shrinking. But if you want to just laugh at some silly stuff, at least in the first season, we'll see how the second season is. It was pretty good.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
Another show I'm looking forward to seeing that's coming out, this is a lot more serious, is Waco: The Aftermath on Showtime. I'm interested in this. It's based on a true story. I don't know if you've seen the preview for this.
I have not.
But that looks good. Also, a show I've just started watching called Beef on Netflix. I know you haven't seen this yet. It stars Stephen Ewan, who was on The Walking Dead, Ali Wong. And you and I were talking about this off the air. The fact that it's felt like for a long time, and it's changed to some degree, but there's still a lot of work to do, especially for Asian actors, that it felt like every time you saw an Asian actor on TV or in a movie, that, well, it has to be an Asian actor because it's a story about growing up as a Korean immigrant or growing up as a Chinese immigrant or whatever. And it was specific to their race. Whereas Stephen Ewan and Ali Wong are just kind of regular people. They're odd, but it has zero really to do with them being Korean necessarily. One of the other characters is Japanese. It's irrelevant, essentially, that he's Japanese. He just happens to be Japanese. And I think it's good that we're seeing more opportunities for deserving actors and actresses, and that they just don't have to be pigeonholed into, well, you can play this role because we need an Asian character.
Well, I think, based on like anything else, I mean, there are plenty of underserved communities who are now finally getting their chance to be seen. But I think that's just old Hollywood structures finally starting to crumble for a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong. I generally will notice when you'll find an ensemble show, not beef, but you'll find an ensemble show where they'll try to make sure we touch everybody. And then it becomes, then you're made aware of it. And these are all talented people anyway.
Right.
But trying to force someone into something simply because they look one way is silly. But
yes,
the reality is, I mean, there's many talented actors and actresses and behind the scenes too. That's the big problem. I think the biggest problem is that there's no representation in the writers' rooms or in the executive level. So when you do, you'll get quality stuff, and you'll get it from stories from people that don't look like, white guys.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. White guys are fine. I like being a white guy myself. However, most of my favorite shows in the past 5 years or so have been shows from classically underrepresented, genders and cultures. I mean, Fleabag was extraordinary. Atlanta was my favorite show of all time. It's just great storytelling, and it has nothing to do. Well, I shouldn't say it has nothing to do with it. Atlanta. What made Atlanta fantastic was just you have an auteur in Donald Glover and his brother, who just created this extraordinary world about a life that many average white people don't get to see. And his storytelling was tremendous. Everything that I've seen, whether it's Killing Eve or Fleabag, and you're just seeing stories told by women, are extraordinary. And to your point, Ali Wong is funny. She's just a funny performer. Stephen Yeun is a terrific actor. He was terrific in Nope, and he was nominated for an Oscar last year. There's just good actors who happen to be telling human stories. It's beside the point. And now, hopefully, we're reaching a point where viewers don't care anything about demographics, or they just want to see good stories, and they'll see anyone do a good story.
We can go on and on forever. I wanted to talk a little more about Atlanta, but we're out of time for this segment, so I want to keep it moving. But I need to. I watched the first episode of Atlanta when it first came out. I liked it, but it didn't grab me enough to stick with it. And I obviously trust your taste in TV that I think I need to give it another shot. So I'm going to add that to my growing list of things I need to watch.
You should. It's art. It's great.
All right. I'm going to give it a second shot. I need to do it. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll bring in the baby bull. Aaron will join us. There's been heavy criticism for the Mandalorian this week coming out. Is that warranted? Plus his kid show of the week and his favorite Marvel show as we get into our top 5. That's coming up next, right here. It's Up Next with Adam the Bull.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. Here's how Books with Brooks works. We read one book a month, and then we talk about it. Classics like Stephen King's The Shining, debut novels like We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and tons of other compelling, life-changing stories, one book and 1 month at a time. So come read along with us, and then listen in.
Welcome, everyone, to Podcast 616, the official podcast of Earth 616. I am your host, Damon Royster, and I am inviting you to listen and subscribe to this Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. On Podcast 616, we gather some of today's greatest comedians, writers, and actors to dive deep into all things Marvel, like comic book history and lore, all the interconnected superhero storylines, and of course, who's hot and who's not in the MCU. Honestly, why aren't you listening right now? You have the power to listen to Podcast 616. And as we always say, with great power comes even greater responsibility. Listen and subscribe to Podcast 616 wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome back to Up Next with Adam the Bull. Andy Robbins, good old, not old. You're not old. I'm older than you. I will remain older than you. by a couple of months.
Let's
One of
keep
my
it that
oldest
way.
and dearest friends is with me co-hosting today, and we now bring in the baby bull himself, who joins us every week. My son, Aaron. Aaron, how are you today?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
We're doing well. All right. A lot of controversy in the world of Mandalorian in the last week, Aaron. I was reading an article at the Hollywood Reporter today, actually this early this morning, and there is a lot of criticism of season 3 of Mandalorian. Now, we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago a little bit, but the critics and fans complaining that the storyline is a mess, that Din Djarin has become pushed to the side a little bit as a secondary character, that baby Grogu has become basically a prop. A lot of the diehard Star Wars fans, those guys, they're complaining about cameos by somewhat big celebrities. Lizzo was in last week's, and Jack Black and Christopher Lloyd, of course. Aaron, do you find this criticism to be fair or foul?
I think that they say the whole storyline is messed up. I still think the storyline is good, but I do agree that Din Djarin hasn't been focused on as much as they have in the past, and Baby Yoda does seem like he isn't very important now.
So you think some of the criticism is fair?
Yes.
Overall, you are still enjoying this season?
Yes, I am.
I wonder, because I really liked Andor, and I thought it was the best Star Wars TV show. And I wonder if some of the fans have soured on Mandalorian a little bit because maybe it doesn't measure up to Andor. Do you think that could be some part of it?
Maybe. I still liked Mandalorian more.
Okay.
But that could be the reason. Because
some people don't like it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Andy, you're up. You got a question for him?
I do. You know, it's funny. I have a 5-year-old, and obviously you're a much more advanced age, and you're a worldly man. What are you watching now? What's your favorite show that you're watching, Aaron?
So it's actually an old show, but there's hundreds of updated versions of it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh my God, I'm all into it now. Yep.
Season 2. So my favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle is Donatello, and if you don't know the names, he's purple.
Mhm.
3 reasons I like it are, it's exciting to find out, like, if someone gets mutant slime dumped on them, then they turn into a mutant. And you could see things from giant genius bats with sussy beards and crazy orange hair to living weeds with walnuts for their hearts. It's a really exciting plot, and I like that all the different turtles are named after painters from the Italian painters. And one funny thing is, one of the main bad guys, the main bad guy crew is controlled by funny brain squid aliens.
Mhm.
What makes it a funny brain squid alien?
Because they have these sussy eyes that are tiny, and they've got little lines in them, and then they're always like,
People can't see you. We can see you, but the listeners can't see you right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
By the way, when my son says sussy, it's like suspect or creepy or whatever. That's his word.
It's
Sussy.
supposed
You got to trademark that.
Well, no, technically I can't because everyone else used it already. But I got it from random people. I mean, it's short for suspicious.
Short for suspicious. Yeah, he likes to use that word. Now we've all started using the word sussy in the house. All right, one more thing for you, Aaron. Coming up in a couple of minutes, Andy and I are going to be doing our top 5 Marvel TV shows of all time. Now, you have not seen any of the Netflix Marvel shows, which came out a while ago. They've all been moved to Disney. They're much darker than the Disney original Marvel shows, so they're not appropriate age for you yet. You'll watch them when you're older. But you have seen all the Disney Marvel TV shows: She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel, Moon Knight, Hawkeye, What If, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and Loki. What is your favorite of those shows?
I'm going to go with Loki.
Why Loki?
We're meeting new characters that we've never met before. Like, what's that time variant of TVA?
Yeah, right.
TVA, we've met these characters. We're meeting. It ties into Quantumania, Ant-Man Quantumania in some way.
which is a
because
newer movie. Well, don't
Yeah.
spoiler here for
Spoiler.
Quantumania is a newer movie. Go ahead.
and the Time Master is connected to Kang the Destroyer in some way, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And we're discovering things about the multiverse that we didn't know.
Yeah, it's a very deep show. It's definitely much deeper than most of the Disney Marvel shows, I would agree. If you had to pick a second choice, what was it? What was number 2? Give us one more that you like.
Probably Moon Knight, because I really like that he went from a British sussy man to rando American guy who is, I don't know how else to explain him. Not sure what his job is, but something else. He's
But-
from America, and he's also the classic Moon Knight.
And there's reason you like it too, because you enjoy the Greek myths, I know.
Yeah, I enjoy Greek myths, but this isn't Greek.
That's true. It's not Greek myths, but go ahead.
It's Egyptian, and I'm really into that as well, which makes it even more exciting.
Okay. And that show is probably the most removed from the rest of the MCU,
Yes.
I would say. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Aaron. Nice performance again today. We'll see you again in 2 weeks, buddy. See you later.
Yeah. Adios. Farewell, Father. Goodbye.
All right. We'll take a break. When we come back, Andy and I will give you our top 5 Marvel TV shows of all time. That's coming up next. Up next with Adam the Bull.
Hey everyone, this is Don Mike Mendoza, the host of Producing While Asian. Join us in Season 2 for more conversations with actors, artists, producers, and more from Broadway, Hollywood, and beyond, every other Wednesday on the Press Play Podcast Network.
All right, welcome back. It is Up Next with Adam the Bull. I am your host, Adam the Bull, of course, joined by a longtime friend and advisor, Andy Robbins.
Oh,
Andy,
gosh.
we're having a great conversation today, getting in depth on TV, but now it's time to continue that, actually, with the top 5 Marvel TV shows of all time. Now, have you seen the Netflix ones, or have you only seen the Disney ones?
You know, the pandemic threw me off. You would think that I'd have time to watch everything, but
Yeah.
my kid was 2, so I somehow missed so much. But I will say I have seen my list is going to be a little controversial. I have not seen any of the Netflix shows. I hear
Yeah.
great things. I have only seen the Disney Plus shows, and the one that I have not seen, which is the one that everyone seems to go nuts about, is or not nuts, is Ms. Marvel, which sounds like it's right up my alley. So I can't say that one way or another it will not be up for consideration.
Okay, so it's off the list for now. Okay, let's start with your top 5. Let's go 5 to 1.
5 to 1.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. I will say, as a precondition, my list, based on my tastes,
Yeah.
kind of go to the more eccentric ones. I will say all of them have amazing, awesome leads in them.
Yeah.
And what I like about most of the ones that I chose, actually all the ones that I chose, is they took big home run swings. And that what I like about the TV format versus the films tend to have somewhat of a formulaic quality.
Yes.
But TV had a chance for them to be a little bit weirder and go more in depth and try some things. So, with that being said, let's see. What do I have for number 5? I wrote She-Hulk.
Okay.
Now, do you want to deep dive into that?
Well,
or do you?
I found She-Hulk did take a big swing.
Yeah.
I like the talking to the camera.
Mm-hmm.
My beef with She, and I really liked the final episode. I thought the final episode, I didn't love the season as a whole, but I thought the final episode was fantastic. And for me, it saved the series for me because I didn't like, I was lukewarm on the rest of it.
Right.
I thought the storyline of her, I guess I want to say it was so far-fetched, but everything in the Marvel universe is so far-fetched. Like her getting sued just seems so stupid. And I don't know. I didn't like that bad woman character. I can't think of her name, whatever her name. Is that Jamila Jamil or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was a weird character, weird actor choice. I didn't love that, but that's why lists are great, because everybody has their own, there's things that attract everybody to different shows.
Yeah, I just kind of liked that it didn't take itself seriously, and that's
Not at all.
sort of a necessary. It's a sort of a necessary element because we're getting a little bit superhero fatigued, And
That's
I
true.
wouldn't say it was sending it up. It was definitely loyal to the character and to the comic. But Tatiana Maslany was great. Wong was used to exceptionally
He's
funny.
nice. Yeah.
Seeing Tim Roth come back as the Abomination was funny,
Yeah.
and the episode with Madison was just laugh out loud funny. I just like that they wanted to try something different, and
Yes.
you can't be afraid to do that, or you can't be afraid to fail. So yeah, there were a lot of misses with it,
Yeah.
but on a whole, it was enjoyable. I looked forward to watching it every week.
All right, number 4.
What if?
Yeah.
Now,
That, yeah.
for the comic nerd in me,
Yeah.
first of all, the animation was beautiful. It was really touching to hear, both Chadwick Boseman come back for his final words, and to see him, that was kind of moving. But like I said, there was nothing formulaic about it. There were, at
That's
least
true.
in terms of what you would see in the Marvel films. It seemed very comic like, in that they were just. It seems like a comic book I would read, not just because of the animation,
Yeah.
the storylines, the zombies, the way
That was
the
really
Jeffrey
good.
Wright's Watcher's character
Yeah.
ended up becoming sort of critical to the series, which seemed like I was not expecting. It was fun. I enjoyed watching it. I'm looking forward to a season 2 of it, and yeah, that's what I have at number 4.
I love the zombie episode. One of the most fun things about What If was every week not knowing like what crazy turn they were going to take with these characters. That did make it fascinating. All right, number 3.
I know this is controversial. I have Loki at 3.
Wow.
Loki is good. No, Loki is really, really good.
Yeah.
This is not to say that it is. It could very well be the best of all of them. Loki, I have at number 3. He's great. The and Owen Wilson was great, and Jonathan Majors at the end was just bonkers. And
Great scene. Yeah.
fantastic, and what a great actor, and what a great moment. The only thing that I had with it, and this is a very slight criticism, I didn't want to do any homework. I felt like I had to pay attention deeply, and there were scenes I had to rewatch deeply just to make sure that I was keeping up with the exposition and the world building, because I didn't know that it was going to be in service of what would eventually be Phase 5 of
Right.
of Marvel.
Yeah.
And beautiful, beautiful to look at. The art direction's great. Tom Hiddleston's great. Owen Wilson, everyone in it was fantastic. And the storytelling was inventive and curious, especially when he met all the other Lokis. I enjoyed all of it. It just, at times, it just felt like I was working and I didn't want to work.
Yeah, when you're dealing with different timelines and stuff, it could get confusing. And yes, there were times I had to go back and say, "What? I don't get it." I got to watch it a second time. All right,
But
number
it's true.
2. Yeah,
It was terrific.
great stuff. Number 2.
2, I have Moon Knight.
Okay, I knew it. I predicted in my head what your number 1 was going to be, and now I'm pretty sure I was right. So, Moon Knight, number
let's
2.
just wait
Go
and
ahead.
see. Yeah, Oscar Isaac is just one of the great actors of our generation, and man, did he have fun with this. And it's also a character I myself was not all that familiar with. So to have that element of it, I don't mind building a character from the beginning, which is sort of the formula of what Marvel does when you introduce a character for the first time. But he was fantastic. The dual role was great. It was fun. It was entertaining. It was swashbuckling. It was a departure from what I think I had seen um, in other Marvel stuff. Ethan Hawke made a totally creepy villain, and the sense of adventure with it, all of it, the locations that they seemingly went to. I thought it was just a good mix of action, comedy, and pathos. You cared very much about what happened to the characters, and I hope in some context they either bring them back for a season 2 or for a some inclusion down the line in an Avengers adventure. Try to say that 3 times fast.
And for good or bad, however you look at it, it felt
Yeah.
the most as I said to Aaron before, it was the most disconnected from the rest of the MCU.
Yeah, I think you get freedom to start
Yes.
telling different types of stories, and that's what comic books are about.
Yeah.
There's, whether it's DC or Marvel, you can have shared universes, you can have just standalone stories. If you find a hero that's engaging, whether it's connected or not connected to something else,
Yeah.
just tell the story. There's, don't worry about canon. Don't worry. Well, I shouldn't say that.
Right,
I'm sure there are plenty of comic book people who think that's blasphemous to say, and
Yeah.
I respect that. But if you just can tell a good yarn, tell it.
All right, number 1. Go ahead.
Number 1. What's my number 1?
It's got to be WandaVision, right?
It is WandaVision.
Yeah.
WandaVision was terrific. I for all the reasons I mentioned before. Home run swings, tremendous performances by not only the leads but also the supporting cast. Catherine Hahn as Agatha, but yeah, Paul Bettany, and it's Elizabeth Olsen's show. She's just terrific. I love the homages to all the television that sort of, I guess, that got pushed to the side as the show started
Yes.
ramping up toward its finale. But it was just different storytelling. As a storyteller, I don't want to necessarily know what's going to happen. I don't think you have to have a neat conclusion, which you didn't have in it. And there was definite emotion and pathos, things happening to characters you don't want to see. And that's what makes, to me, just a good show where you can't predict everything that's going to happen. And with superheroes, that's kind of tricky because you want them to, if they're good, they have to stick around. So having
Yeah.
a novel sense of I'm not sure what's going to happen to these characters I'm fond of is critical. And I just thought it was really great art direction. I will say the CGI for the final battle was a little cheesy, but
Yeah.
again, that's the limitations of a TV
Yeah.
budget. That was their first show, so
It
for
was.
them to come out, for Marvel to come out and to have that be their first show was, I thought, a very ambitious and successful go at it. Yeah.
I think they had the backing of the Marvel Universe, which allowed them to take that risk.
Mm.
But that was a massive risk because 15 minutes into the first episode, I'm like, what is this crap?
Oh, really? Oh, I loved
I
it.
did
You
not.
didn't like
I
it?
did not like it at first. Now,
Okay.
once I realized where they were going, and maybe I
Yeah.
should have realized it sooner, then I kind of got into it more. But at first, I'm
Okay.
like, what is this? I stopped watching it after 10, 15 minutes.
Really?
And then I went back like a day or two later. I'm like, okay, this guy, at first I was like, what are they doing? And then I realized, okay, they're just being different, being creative, outside the box, stick with it. And of course, then I really enjoyed it. It ended up 4 on my list.
Okay.
WandaVision.
Mhm.
Maybe part of that's because it was the first one and I saw it but I thought it was great. And the way you really, for a while, you didn't really know what was going on for sure. Like, why
That's
was
why I
this
like it.
happening? Yeah.
That's why I like it. I'm down for being. I don't want to be smarter than the show. I like being surprised. I like
That's
not
right.
knowing.
Yes.
And if it's done well, then you'll keep me around for longer.
Yeah. So I'll get into my top 5 here. I loved your
Please.
top 5.
All right.
I did have a couple of the Marvel Netflix shows in there.
Educate me. Sell me.
It was a tough call. I'll tell you, making this list was hard. Between Disney and Netflix, the only show that was bad was one of the Netflix ones was Iron Fist. That was a terrible show. That was a major fail. The other Netflix shows were all great. I told you I didn't love She-Hulk, but I loved the ending. All the other Disney Plus shows to me were all great. Like I really had in the end 8 or 9 that could have easily been in my top 5. And I kind of, listen, I love action and I love the fighting. And so I had a mix in my top 5 of kind of more thoughtful shows, like not that WandaVision and Loki didn't have plenty of action, but I think of those as more thoughtful shows than just beating them up and the whole show is really about action.
Yeah, I think it was character and cerebral. Yeah,
yes.
Sure.
So in the end, number 5 for me was the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I feel like that one's kind of been lost. And it wasn't the deepest show on the face of the earth, obviously. And the bad guy, who was a woman, wasn't that bad. In a way, you're kind of rooting for her. But I love the chemistry between those two characters and those two actors.
Yeah.
I really like.
They have good banter. It reminded me of some Lethal Weapon stuff for sure.
Yes, it's a good comparison. It really is. I love the connection between those two guys and the action. And then there was some great fight scenes. And I love that he becomes, basically becomes Captain America at the end and where they're going to go with that. So that, I think, and there was some depth to it. It was telling a story about, the poor black community that he grew up in. And there was some politics in it. And the guy who had originally been the true first special soldier, remember they went to him and, and there was racism involved there. So they did get a little deep, which was interesting. And you wouldn't necessarily have expected it from a show that was mostly about action.
I agree. I know. I liked it. I liked it. I feel as though that's the kind of show, because of its TV limitations and the budget, it didn't allow it to do maybe what it would have liked to do. I think it got a little I remember toward the scene once the show was wrapping up and he was in the Captain America costume and he just sat and talked to the police for seemingly 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That was a little bit ham-fisted, but he's good. I mean, they're both good. You mentioned something which I think is a big problem with Marvel, which at least I've heard, and I kind of agree with. They have a villain problem. It has nothing to do with this particular one. All their villains are wildly empathetic. I mean, they all have and again, this you would think for character development, that's great. But there is no Marvel movie I can think of off the top of my head where you can't feel some empathy or sympathy for a villain. And sometimes a villain is just bad.
Yeah.
And I feel as though the stakes are different. And this goes even when in the most recent Thor movie, you have Gore, the God Butcher, and a terrific actor playing him. But the character ended up becoming kind of sympathetic. They're all like that.
A little bit.
And
yeah.
sometimes you need to just have a bad guy be bad and have the fans cheer when the bad guy
when they get killed
is defeated. Yeah. So in that sense, yeah, I thought the political drama was good. It just it didn't crack my top 5.
Yeah. All right. Number 4 was WandaVision was number 4 for me. We've already talked about it, so I'll leave it there. And Loki was actually number 2 for me. Number 3, this is all about action, violence, and beating up. The Punisher. So now The Punisher was the last. There was actually a last season of Daredevil that was the last Marvel Netflix show created, but the Daredevil had already been out. But the Punisher was the last new character that they based the series on. Yeah. And John Barenthal, I mean, he's perfect for that kind of role, obviously. Yeah. He is good at ass kicking and being like kind of a curmudgeonly guy. There's not much depth to this, to be honest. There is a storyline where you see it early, so I mean it's been out a while. His wife and his daughter are killed, and that's why he becomes the Punisher to avenge their death. But mostly it's just about him just going and killing bad people. I mean, it's really that simple. But in its truest form, the bad people are really. You talked about having a bad guy. The bad guys in this are really bad. There's no redeeming quality for them at all. It was really and my number 1. I said Loki was 2. My number 1 is Daredevil. So. What's his name? The guy who's he's actually
Charlie Cox.
Charlie Cox. So Charlie Cox, I thought, did an amazing job with this role. And this show, it's really interesting because on the surface, it feels like it's like the Punisher, very shallow. And actually, the Punisher is first introduced in, I believe it was season 2 of Daredevil. Can't remember now if it was season 2 or season 3, but it must have been season 2. He's introduced there, and so are some of the other characters that end up part of the Netflix MCU. But he's almost like Superman in a type of way where he has this other life where he's a lawyer. Now he's blind and he's a lawyer and then he's Daredevil. And in most of the Netflix stuff, now this is different for Netflix, but generally in most Netflix stuff, the superhero or most Marvel stuff, we know the superhero is the superhero. There's no other alter ego or other. Like Superman is Clark Kent, so we don't know he's Superman. In Marvel, you know the superheroes. They don't hide who their real identity. Iron Man did originally, but that changed quickly.
I mean, not as an unfit. I mean, certainly Spider-Man has gone out of his way for a
That's true.
time.
That's true. That's true. Spider-Man is the case.
Yeah, but anyway, Tony Stark sort of broke that mold when he said, "No, I'm
for the most part." But he doesn't want anybody to know he's Daredevil. The show is deep because it's about his background and how he ended up being this karate master, if you will. His relationship with his love interests, the multiple love interests in the show are deep. His family background, his family history, how he ended up blind. We get into some development, other characters. Vincent D'Onofrio plays the bad guy, which he also brought back the character in Hawkeye. And he does a great job. I mean, D'Onofrio's a great actor. I don't know. I just really enjoyed it from head to toe. Now,
the people involved in it seem like it's one of the ones it's on my very long list of things to catch up on.
All right. Well, I got some fan questions, but I'm just going to do one of them here, or I'll do 2 because we don't have a lot of time, and I wanted to keep it a little shorter, but I'm having so much fun talking with you and doing all this stuff. So let's just hit 2 of the fan questions real quick. The first one is from my guy Darren Smith. Darren is a sports talk radio guy in Kansas City, who we've connected with here in Cleveland on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. great guy, does a great job covering the Chiefs. He asked this question: which TV show was ahead of its time, or better yet, is or would still be relevant today? His choice is Rock with Charles S. Dutton. Do you have an answer to that one, Andy?
Oh gosh, ahead of its time.
Or I can give you mine.
Yeah, let me hear yours.
What's funny to me is I thought about this and I said it was one of the first non-network TV shows, and I liked it, and it was really good the first couple of seasons. They kept it on too long and it went off the rails, and I feel like if it had come out 20 years later, it would have been outstanding. And that's Oz. Did you watch Oz on HBO?
I did, yeah.
It was the first, I think Arliss was the first show on HBO.
Oh, that's a good Arliss, or what was that one where the guy has hallucinations? Oh gosh. Let's call it Arliss. Let's call it Arliss.
Yeah.
Or no, or what was it? The football show. Oh gosh.
Oh yeah, that was on ESPN. You talking about Playmakers?
No.
There was something else.
Yeah, I'll have to do a deeper dive when we.
Well, yeah, I feel like I can't think of it, but I think Oz, and I loved the first couple seasons. It became absurd, right? It eventually got to the point where they'd introduce a character and he'd be dead. Like there was like 10 people dying every day in this prison. Like they would have been shut down a long time ago. And by the way, like I feel like every actor on there ended up being on 2 episodes of Law and Order or one of the Law and Order shows.
Yeah, that's a shared universe.
The guy who certainly the guy, Christopher Merloni went on to be on that but the guy who became the big star out of that, you would never have guessed, was J.K. Simmons, who played the head Nazi on that show.
Oh my gosh, was he terrifying on that show?
Right? Yeah. He was scary as hell. But I feel like that show, if it came out now, would be way better than it was. And I still thought it was good.
Oz has a pretty. I don't know how it's generally received. I was pretty taken by it. It was gripping to watch, and it was excited. I think it was exciting every week. And to your point, the novelty of who will live and anyone can die at any time was part of the thrill of it. But that was a tough watch, but a good watch.
Yeah.
The only thing I was thinking of for my take of it, and it's a show that I loved that maybe, it's got a rabid fan base, but I'll tell you why I picked it. Twin Peaks. So Twin Peaks was a network show, which prior to that, and David Lynch was a filmmaker who decided to try TV and brought a cinematic quality to TV that had not really been seen before. The subject matter was out there, and he took a lot of creative license that wasn't really ready for the bulk of American TV watching. But in the wake of that show, that's where you would get, these premiere shows on HBO, like The Sopranos, and it showed what the medium could do. I think Twin Peaks was, whether you loved it or hated it or anything in between, which I don't think you do. I think you either loved it or hated it, and I loved it. I think there was nothing before it like on television. And, even they brought it back a couple of years ago for a Showtime series, which was even weirder and more fascinating and polarizing, but I loved it. And that opened the door to have TV as a medium see things a little bit more cinematically and draw a different type of talent to the type of shows that would be made.
Which we've seen continue to grow. All right, last question. This one is from our guy, Chase Smith. Chase is the head of Press Play Pods, which, of course, this podcast is the home at. His question was, if there was one more season of The Sopranos, what would have happened?
Well, I think, and I don't think we all know what happened now.
Do we know for sure?
Yeah, I think we do.
Okay.
I think we do. I think even David Chase has made it clear.
Yes.
I it's not something you want to hear, but I think there would have been an enormous vacuum of leadership. Does that family even continue? Who takes over? Is it Steven Van Zandt's character? Is what becomes of that family? And do they even exist anymore? And do they coexist with the New York families?
Yeah.
And or is it turned into a massive, blood war over the bridge and tunnel?
Well, I think yes. I think the final, if they added one more season, because we obviously all assume he got shot and killed.
Yes.
Right. So it's 2-pronged. It's the fight for control of the family and whether the family can exist, which gets bloody and ugly. And and on the other side, somebody, I don't know if it's AJ or if it's daughter, somebody is trying to find out who exactly put the hit on Tony.
Mm-hmm.
Like, was it the New York families? I can't remember now if I, at the time, thought I knew for sure. It's been so many years. But I think that's part weaved into the storyline, maybe, is trying to find out. And maybe it ends up being one of his own guys. You know, who knows?
Sure. Yeah, it could be. And that's assuming AJ and assuming they live.
That's true, because they were at the table.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you take out everybody? You can't have any witnesses. Of course, it was a pretty full restaurant.
Yeah. My guess is they don't kill the family, but.
Yeah.
And now it's sadly James Gandolfini died. Obviously, we'll never know.
Yeah. It was a loss.
Yeah. I didn't like the prequel. Did you like the prequel? I thought it was.
You know what?
down.
I chose not to watch it because I thought the show was so. I didn't want it to ruin my.
Good call.
Listen, I was excited at the prospect of it. I saw the trailer and I thought, okay, maybe. And then ultimately, I decided I wasn't invested in revisiting that world because I loved it so much.
Yeah, that was a good call. Michael, I wanted to bring you on to talk about what character you'd be in a TV show, which we talked about last week, but we're so late on time at this point. We're going to save it for next episode. Michael, thank you for producing today. Andy, it was quite a pleasure having you on. We talked TV for an hour. It's been beautiful. I'll talk to you again soon off the air. That's going to do it for this episode of Up Next with Adam the Bull. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Have a great week, everybody, and enjoy your TV.